Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I'm Damon Martin.
And I'm Patrick Guerra. And Damon, I need you to make a choice. Are we going to do this podcast about a knock at the cabin or not?
We are, which means it's the end of the world.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, we are going to talk about... Okay, so Knock at the Cabin, the new film from M. Night Shyamalan, a director that is kind of a divisive director, let's be honest, Patrick. There's people who love him, there's people who hate him, there's people who are conflicted by him. Of course, M. Night Shyamalan came to fame through his first, not his first movie, but his first prominent film, which was The Sixth Sense, which was nominated for Oscars and is known for potentially one of the greatest twists in film history, starring the great Bruce Willis, of course, and did really, really well at the box office. And then that kind of set off a career for M. Night Shyamalan to where his films kind of became known for the twist ending, which was a gift and a curse, if you ask me, Patrick. Yeah. And his filmography has kind of taken a lot of dips and turns and some strange choices in there, and then kind of returned to form more lately. But I'll admit, I am an M. Night Shyamalan fan, to be honest with you. I am a big fan of his work. Even some of his lesser known or lesser favorited work, I've actually kind of weirdly enjoyed, with the exception of, let's say, The Last Airbender, which was just terrible.
You watched that? Okay. I never even bothered to watch that.
I did, only because I had a friend who was obsessed with the manga, and he made me watch it, and I was like, yeah, okay. And I was like, this can't be accurate. And he's like, no, this is nothing like the source material. And then, yeah, that was the end of that. The original animation, yeah, I was like, no, okay, this is terrible. Anyways, yeah.
I would have never guessed that you would see the last person I would think would see The Last Airbender would be you. Truth be told, I think people get way too worked up about directors. Unless a director is like an actual bona fide shithead and there's a reason to be angry at them. There's a few out there, actually. Or they do things that are like, I think maybe on the level of like a Serbian film where it's like, I think you might be a shithead for making that movie. Like, okay, I see that you made it, but you're probably an asshole, like, for doing it. Outside of those types of people get way too worked up about directors. It's sort of a weird group hive thing that's been going on basically since the message board days, when people talk about films. And M. Night Shyamalan was at the top of that list for a long time. Right around, I think, the Village or Lady in the Water. I can't remember which one came first.
The Village was first, and that
right, and
highly divisive,
highly divisive, and he became a target for people to just spew hatred and this M. Night Shyamalan. Calm the fuck down, everybody. He's a really good director. Okay, you can direct a movie that's not that good really well. Like that's a thing you can do. He's a really brilliant director. At the time when he first splashed onto the scene with Sixth Sense, people were calling him the next Spielberg, and it wasn't far off. He's got a really great eye. He knows where to put the camera. He knows how to tell a story through the visuals. He's really good at that. Whether it's successful or not is up for debate. And you know, so you don't have to like his movies. That's not what I'm saying. But I think people just get too excited about that shit. Like, calm down. We're lucky that we have talented directors out there giving it a shot. I mean, if you were given the shot, you'd take it too. Well, M. Night is the same way. He takes the shot and he does his thing. And it is a very M. Night Shyamalan thing. All his movies kind of have a feel and a look and a style to them. Most of them have twists, except does A Knock at the Cabin have a twist? I don't know. We're actually going to have to get into that because, truth be told, this was based on a book by Paul Tremblay, right?
Yep, exactly.
And now I haven't read the book. I know you have. We'll get into that a little bit later. But just what was your initial thoughts coming into this? Because I'm like you, Damon. I actually like
props. Look, I brought props to the episode. I got the props. I got my book.
So that whole rack back there with all those books on it, that's not display case. You've read that stuff.
I have actually read these books. Yes, I have.
Yeah. You can see behind me all the stuff that I've read. It's very clear.
It's a dark pit of doom and despair behind.
That's exactly what my life is.
So I don't want to go off on a tangent here. I want to real quick on your director thing because you're absolutely right. We do get in that. Like I am a fan of directors, and when I say that, I don't mean like when they put out a film that I'm not a big fan of, do I suddenly abandon them and go flip out and lose my mind? That's what I have a problem with. I 100% agree with you. I'm a huge Quentin Tarantino fan. You know this. I've said it on podcasts before. He's my favorite director. Now, Quentin, to me, and I know you're not the Quentin guy, he hasn't had a miss yet. Now, are there films of his I like better than others? Absolutely. Do I, I like Kill Bill. I don't typically go back and rewatch Kill Bill.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. When it's on, I'll watch it. But it's not one I'll seek out, like let's say Pulp Fiction or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where I will seek out watching that film. Like it, still enjoy it. Kevin Smith is a great example. I love Kevin Smith. Have I loved all of Kevin Smith's movies? Absolutely not. But do I love him as a person? I love.
The human being is one of the brightest lights on the planet. I love it.
Eli Roth is another example. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of all of Eli Roth's work, but I love him as a dude. Like hearing him talk, his passion for horror films. So yeah, I'm just a fan. Like, you know what I mean? I don't abandon. M. Night Shyamalan is a great example of that. I have not liked all of his work. I've liked a lot of it. And I appreciate his vision. I appreciate his insight in the way he shoots films and the way he tells stories. There's one of my favorite shows I've watched that's on. It's in its final season right now on Apple TV is Servant, which is a show that he didn't create, but he has kind of run since it started. He's kind of crafted the story and directed a bunch of episodes. His daughter's directed episodes. He just didn't actually create the show, but he's kind of taken it over. And I love it. It's a weird show, and it's not for everybody. But I've enjoyed it. So that's how I am with him. And are there films of M. Night Shyamalan's filmography that I don't like? Absolutely. There are, like I mentioned, Last Airbender. There are other ones on there. After Earth is another one where I'm like, I could never see that again. And I never saw, like, I could never see it, and I'd be fine with that.
Right.
So to that point, getting into Knock at the Cabin. Knock at the Cabin is an adaptation, as I mentioned. It's a book by Paul Tremblay, who is a really famous horror author. As I mentioned, Head Full of Ghosts is probably his most famous book. It was like his fourth or fifth novel, but that one really blew up, won a bunch of awards, and critically acclaimed. He just actually came out with another new book, I think last year. Cabin at the End of the World is the name of the book, and it was actually the first book I had ever bought by him. I actually went to the store, we have a big bookstore here in Columbus, Ohio, where I shop, and they have a huge horror section. So I go there, once every few months and look and see what they have. And I heard about Head Full of Ghosts, and they didn't have it. And I was like, oh, damn. Then I saw this one. I picked it up, and I read the back, and I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. I'm intrigued. And I bought it, and I read it, and I really liked it. Were there aspects I didn't like? Sure, there's aspects of a lot of books I buy that I don't like, but overall, I really enjoyed it. Really good book. When the trailer came out for this, I'll never forget. I had gotten a notification for a press release, because I get a lot of press release stuff, that M. Night Shyamalan just suddenly released a trailer for his new film at like 3 o'clock in the morning one night. And I just happened to be up, and I got the notification on my phone. I was like, what? And it said, Knock at the Cabin. I was like, that's weird. And so I watched the trailer. Dave Bautista, who I adore, by the way. Really good cast. Jonathan Groff, who is in Mindhunters, the great show from David Fincher on Netflix. Good cast. Watched the trailer and I was just like, this is a cabin at the end of the world. And then I noticed at when you look on the materials, you see it's based on this. And I was like, why did they change the title? So let me start there. I don't like the title of this film, Patrick. I just don't.
Oh, okay.
Knock at the Cabin. It's a weird name. I personally, and it's not even because I like the book, A Cabin at the End of the World just sounds cooler to me. Knock at the Cabin is to me, it's a weird title. And that kind of starts my issues with this film, Patrick, because Knock at the Cabin, and we'll get into it much deeper in spoilers, and there's an interview that proves my point. Knock at the Cabin feels to me like M. Night Shyamalan read this book, put it down, and said to himself, that was pretty good, but I can do it better. And that's what this film ultimately is. It's M. Night Shyamalan liking a book and him thinking to himself, I could do it better.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, I'm guessing by your tone you don't agree with him.
In a lot of ways, no. Now, to be fair, I'm not saying I dislike this film as a whole. There's a lot of, it is not even because, let me be clear about this with the whole book thing, because a lot of book readers immediately strike out against TV shows and or film adaptations. It's
Right.
not as good as the book. I'm not one of those guys. I read Stephen King's The Outsider after I had watched the show on HBO. The show on HBO was incredible. One of my favorite shows of the year. I loved it. The book is good. The show is better. That's not a knock on Stephen King. I read a ton of Stephen King books. I like the book. The show is better. They made a few tweaks and changes in the show that made it better. Stronger story, stronger character development. Really enjoyed that. The Shining is another example, not to keep piling on Stephen King. I know Stephen King hates The Shining, the movie that Stanley Kubrick made. You and I did that as our first ever episode on this podcast almost 4 years ago, Patrick. I love The Shining. I don't dislike the book, but I love it. I keep going back to Stephen King. It's another one. The book is great, but I love the adaptations they've done. There's a million like this. No Country for Old Men. The book is great. I love the book. The movie from the Coen brothers is better in my opinion. They don't really make a lot of huge changes in the movie, but it's better as a movie. There's a million examples of that. Shawshank Redemption, what are some other ones I'm thinking of? Casino and Goodfellas, I would argue the movies are better than the books. It's not that they're bad books, it's just the movies do better. So I'm not like one of those guys who's like, oh, the book is holy, it's untouchable. I'm not that. And so it's not even that. It just feels like, because the changes that M. Night Shyamalan makes in this movie are dramatic changes to a couple of major points that we'll get into in spoilers, that I keep going back to the same point, Patrick. It feels like he read it and said, I could do it better. And that kind of bugs me because of how he did it. It's not little tweaks and changes, like he changed the demeanor of a character, or maybe he changed the name. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It felt like he read it and said, you know what, this is good, but my version's better. That's how I took this film.
Let's expound on that in spoilers, because I can't really add anything to it because I've never read the book. I'm a bit of an illiterate, if you, I mean, in functional terms. Like I just don't read. I don't have time. I could read on planes, but they have a lot of movies, so I watch those instead because I'm obsessed with movies. And that's kind of how I evaluate a lot of IP that is out there right now. And many of the movies that are out there right now are usually based on a book or a story or something written by somebody, and then writers and directors and producers come in and they tweak stuff. That's kind of how Hollywood runs. Like they're looking for the Godfather was a dime store book. It was just a book that somebody thought was good enough, and they decided to make it into something. So this is nothing new. This is what we do. I always think I have like an advantage when I watch movies, comic book movies based on books, movies based on stuff that already exists in some other format, because I don't have to weigh it against the book. I get to just weigh it for what it is. And what I think A Knock at the Cabin is a very tense thriller that is almost well, it's going to be tough to talk about a lot of things because a lot of it exists in spoilers, but from what you can glean from those trailers, the trailers tell you basically how the movie's going to play out. You know, these four strangers are going to show up at this door, and they're going to tell this family of three, that if you don't sacrifice one of your own willingly, the world is going to end. You have to do it. You have to figure that out. And that is how the movie plays out, rather swiftly, rather easily. And I'm here's where I'm impressed with what M. Night Shyamalan did, is with such a simple premise. And I don't know, is the book very long?
No, it's not very long.
Yeah, this is a very swift movie too. I don't know let me see how long it is. It's probably runtime of an hour 40, so almost for 2 hours. He manages to take a very simple premise and stretch it out over 2 hours and not make it feel like a slog. Like he knows like just the right point to kind of create another little ratchet of tension. And this movie almost starts immediately with tension. and it just sort of sustains itself. And it goes higher and higher and higher, but it never dips into just fun and easiness. And there's a lot of trademarks of the Shyamalan style, a lot of like looking into the past. That's something he seems to do in a lot of his movies, is he will take a moment to go back in time to a character's life before the events that are taking place right now, and finding a way to like use your life experience to get you out of the hairy situation that you're in. Knock at the Cabin has that very much. I don't know how integrated that was into the book. Was it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like I
Okay.
said, a lot of the major strokes are the same. I don't want to keep going back to the book movie thing, but like a lot of the major strokes are the same. We didn't. That's not affected. And to your point there, like what I really, the one thing I did like about this movie that M. Night Shyamalan, and there are certain directors who do this really really well. This is a very claustrophobic movie.
Yeah.
It all takes place inside of a cabin. You're outside for very little time in this movie. It's a very claustrophobic movie, and you're really dealing with ultimately 7 characters. The
Yeah.
4 strangers and the family of 3. Eric, Andrew, and Wynn, their daughter. That's it. 7 characters, really, for the majority of this film. I love small claustrophobic stories like that. I love it. I love those kind of movies. I love films that all take place in one room, things like that, and again, when you stretch out from that, but like when it can be self-contained and a lot of the action all takes place then. It's not really, and again, it's a very intimate movie. It's not a big
Yeah.
action-packed, crazy, wild. Like when you hear about like an apocalyptic thriller, you're thinking like, Independence Day or, like what's that movie, 2012, or like those movies like these big.
Oh yeah.
No, it's not that. It's not that at all. And I appreciate that it is so small and intimate and feels that way. I know this is a weird comparison. You're going to say, how do you make that comparison? It's a lot like Reservoir Dogs, where
No, I can see that.
the entire movie is these 4 robbers, these 4 thieves or 5 thieves, whatever. They're basically telling the story of the heist. You at no point during that movie see the heist. You see the aftermath of the heist. You see them getting back to the getaway, but you never actually see the heist. It's all told through narrative of them telling the story. That's kind of in a way what this is. They're telling you this. They're telling you about how they got to this moment where these 4 strangers came together. They've been told that the world is going to end unless one of the 3 people in this family sacrifices themselves willingly. They have to make a sacrifice, and if they don't, the world is going to end. And it's one of those things like we talk about with like Hereditary or other movies that involve faith or religion or demons, whatever you want to say, where the question of faith really does get in there, because you're asking, you're asking someone to believe in the unbelievable. And that's really the premise of this movie. You're asking, I mean, again, we're going to talk later. We're going to get into one of our favorite new categories, which is could we survive this horror film? Later in the podcast, but that's exactly what this is. Like if 4 weirdos showed up at your house and said, one of you has to sacrifice yourself or the end of the world, I mean, I would laugh in their face. Like, what?
Yeah.
So it sounds so bizarre, but that's what the tension continues to ratchet up in this movie, and that's what I did like about this movie. The tension, the characters are really well done, and the 7 people you meet are all of such different demeanor and different personalities that it works really well when they kind of clash together.
Yeah, it sort of has like hints of like a post-apocalyptic movies where you get a band of people who are complete strangers and they all sort of have a different personality, and it all adds something to the story, to the tension. There's shades of that there. There is to me a very like on the nose nod to Friday the 13th, the original, and that's in the score. Tell me you didn't hear Friday the 13th. Like I heard it.
Yeah.
It was like, especially in the moments, and they show this in the trailer, when our 4 strangers played by Abby Quinn, Nika Mbuko Bird, Rupert Grint, and of course Dave Bautista, when they're trying to break into that cabin, you see that in the trailer. There's like these sort of like manic violins going. It's like right out of Friday the 13th, and we're in a cabin in the woods. I think it was very wise of M. Night Shyamalan and company to say there's not going to be a lot of traditional horror in this movie. It's a very tense movie, but we're putting together a horror movie. We insist upon that. And this was done last year in a movie that I absolutely adored and made my list of best horror movies of the year. Speak No Evil did the exact same thing. Speak No Evil, for the most part, is not a horror movie until it is, but for the first like hour or so, they put this score together that is unmistakably a horror score, and I like that. And to me, it's a great way to not force horror onto a story that doesn't need it, rather than just to create a layer over the top of it, a atmosphere that not just the tension of the story and all that, but there's a full atmosphere coming from the score that says I am in a horror movie. I loved that choice, and I really enjoyed that part of it, and it kept me on my edge. And I don't know if I would say I love this movie, but I can tell you that like I was invested, and I felt like I was, I was scared for this family, played by Jonathan Groff, who you mentioned, Ben Aldridge, who plays Andrew, and their daughter Wen, played by Kristen Cui. I was scared for them, and I'm a parent, so it's very easy to put myself in those shoes. I go, oh, if I was put this premise in front of me with my children and my wife, yeah, I can understand why this would be absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I no that all makes sense. Let me also, not to shift gears too dramatically here, because we are getting into spoilers.
Shift them,
because there's something that we have to kind of get into spoilers to talk about a lot of the film. But I also want to mention one other thing, I would say this is a big reason why this film bothered me, and this is the second M. Night Shyamalan film that has been rated R. The first one was The Happening, which was not one of his stronger efforts. It's pretty clear that M. Night Shyamalan enjoys apocalyptic stories. We saw that with Signs, we saw with The Happening, and we're seeing it here as well. This film is rated R, and I don't understand, because there's some language, and while there is some blood and a little bit of gore, they really don't show it.
Right.
And so in that aspect, I'm kind of like, this is the reverse of my biggest criticism for Megan that came out earlier this year. Megan was a film that was PG-13, and my biggest criticism of that film was, if it had been a hard R, it would have been so much better, because they could have pushed the envelope with the kills and the gore and and they kind of toned it down. And we heard all about it. They said there is probably going to be an unrated version that will come out, because they did push the envelope a lot further. They eventually cut and edited because they found out how popular the trailer and everything had gotten on TikTok and other social media platforms, and so they didn't want to cut out teenagers from going to this movie. This film is the reverse. It's rated R, but it doesn't feel like an R-rated movie. And the reason that irritates me is because in a lot of the moments where there could be blood and gore, and again, I'm not saying it's a super bloody or gory movie, or would it be even with an R rating, but in the moments where they could push that envelope, Patrick, they don't. And there's a little bit of language, but I'm kind of like, why is this rated R? If you're going to make this movie the way they made it, I seriously, when it was over, I was like, how is this rated R? Like, this is a PG-13 movie, and I'm not even complaining that it's a PG-13 movie. I'm just saying, if you're going to get that R rating, make it worth my time to make it an R rating, because there are a few moments of gore in this film, which we have to get into spoilers to really talk about those, but there are a few moments of gore in this film. And if they had actually shown it, that would have upped the intensity and continued to raise the tension, because you mentioned it, it's a harrowing situation to be a family of three, to get kidnapped and held hostage, more or less, by these four weird strangers. And these four strangers are all different. It's not like some kooky cult where they all drink the same Kool-Aid. These are four almost strangers in their own right. You know what I mean? They're not all the same personality. They're not all the same people. And so you're trying to figure them out. And then when the gory moments happen, and again, there's only a couple of them, but when the way the cinematography is done, the way the effects are done, the way the film is shot, I was like, why are you cutting away? Why are you not showing us what we're supposed to be seeing right here? And why is this rated R? I walked away, like, I literally turned to my girlfriend. We left the theater. I was like, why was this? Can you explain to me why it was an R-rated movie? Because I don't understand it.
I don't think M. Night Shyamalan makes that kind of movie. He just doesn't. I think if this had been some a traditional horror director who was very like talented on a similar level to M. Night, I think they would have shown that stuff. I also think it changes it into a different movie if you really go, because there are some moments, and we can't get into them right now in the spoilers, where you go, oh, if you wanted to make this a hard R, these moments would be devastatingly ugly, gory, and nasty. They would be really gross. But M. Night Shyamalan's not that kind of storyteller. He doesn't tell the story. What the pattern I've noticed in his movies is he leaves it up to you. And this is something that certain directors do. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that he falls into this category of director who goes, I'm going to show you something just up to the line, and then I'm going to cut away, and I'm going to let you fill in the blank, because to me, that's scarier. To M. Night, that's a scarier thing. I'm with you on one level that, like, this probably could have been a PG-13. If anything, I think you could have cut one scene down slightly and made it, and it would have, there's one scene in particular I'm thinking of, I'm sure it's the same one you're thinking of. If you'd have cut that scene just a hair, this is a PG-13 movie, like, across the board. It's just not that hardcore. Like The Dark Knight's more hardcore than this movie, and that's a PG-13 movie. So I think it's just his style. It's just, and I think that he chooses to tell the story that way. And I do think if it had been an R-rated movie of the kind that you and I are thinking about, it would be a very different movie. And I don't think this movie is set out to disturb us. At least, in the iteration that came out on screen, it doesn't come out there to, like, freak us out the way, Terrifier is kind of a bad example. It's two apples and oranges. But other movies that kind of fall in, like maybe even a movie like Smile, for instance. Smile needs to go to that level to freak you out. It needs to go that far, that dark. I think this story doesn't need it necessarily. It didn't change, like, how I enjoyed the movie, but I agree. I'm like, yeah, you could have made this a PG-13.
Well, here's why I disagree a little bit on that when you say it doesn't need it. And here's why I say that, because we're so much of this film, you're basically living in the point of view of the three people who have been kidnapped, right? Like, that's our point of view. We're living in their world. We don't know what these people really want. We don't know how they got here. We don't know why they're here. They tell us, but they also tell us a lot of things. We don't see it from their perspective, and that's all fine. Their mission, let's just say mission for lack of a better word. We don't know what they're really here about. They tell us what they're here about, but we don't see it. So we're living, the majority of this movie, living through the eyes of the three people who have been kidnapped. The two parents, Eric and Andrew, and their daughter, Wynn. We're seeing this film through their eyes. There's, right off the bat, early in the film, there's a particularly horrific, what could be a particularly horrific moment. Again, I know we're speaking a lot of code here because we can't get into spoilers, and we'll get there in just a second. But there's one particularly horrific moment at the very beginning that kind of sets the stage for how serious this is, and I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Sets the stage for what's to come, because at the beginning it's really not, it doesn't seem that serious, right? Like, they've
you wouldn't know how to take these people serious until this thing happens,
right? And this thing ratchets us up, and then we hear it, and we kind of hear a little bit of it. We see the aftermath of what this happens, and that we see the shock and the awe on the faces of the three people who've been kidnapped, or particularly the two people, because they kind of hide the daughter's eyes. If you show that, though, doesn't it elevate the tension when you see the depths and the lengths these people are willing to go to?
I don't think so.
Their mission. I disagree. I think that you needed it, because you don't see it. You don't really understand it. You see the aftermath, but I think seeing the lengths of which these people are willing to go to complete their mission raises the elevation and raises the tension, because in that moment it just feels like it's missing. Like you don't. It's like cutting out. It's like cutting out too. It's like when you watch a. It's like when you watch a great R-rated movie and then they cut out the stuff on TV, and then when you watch it on like AMC or TBS or whatever, and if you hadn't seen the movie before, it's a completely different movie because they cut out something that had such an impact that if you hadn't seen it before, you'd be watching it and be like, wow, this just doesn't make sense. Why is it so important? It's because they cut it out. And this is kind of where it feels like the gravity of the situation would have been elevated so much, particularly with that first initial scene I'm talking about. I'm not saying it needs to get full on like spaghetti nastiness. I'm saying like show me the links these people are willing to go to prove their point, and then I understand it better. And it fell a little bit flat because he refuses to show you that. And I agree with you, that is M. Night Shyamalan's way. He did, even in The Happening, which had far more gore than this film did. And even that wasn't ultra gory. But it just feels like, yeah, he doesn't want to take that step. And I get it. I get it. I'm not faulting him. I don't want him to become a filmmaker he's not. But when it comes to this particular material and you have an R rating, push that envelope and show us the gravity of what these people are willing to do to get to what they want done. And I feel like that came up short for me a lot in this film.
Let's roll into spoilers now, because I can respond to it, and I think it's good because it's kind of near the beginning of the movie anyway. So this will be our spoiler section from here on out. If you have not seen the movie, as you can see, Damon and I are mixed on it, but at the end of the day, it's out there. You need to see it for yourself. You need to hit us up and tell us what you thought about it as well. But let's get into spoilers, and I will respond to what you're saying. They do show exactly the lengths that they're going to go to. They don't show it to you explicitly. That's the difference. And I think what we do here and what we're talking about here is everything you see in the trailer is basically how the first like 10, 15 minutes of the movie go, maybe the first 10 minutes of the movie go. And then these four strangers are standing in front of this family and they make this proposition to them that you must make a choice. And if you don't make a choice, each one of us is going to have to like sacrifice ourselves, and then it will put a curse on the world.
It'll unleash a plague as well.
It will unleash a plague, right? So you got to make the choice. Now they're totally natural and rational responses to say, absolutely not. You guys are fucking psychos. You four weirdos. No, we're not sacrificing one of ourselves. Sorry, it's not happening. Well, how do you show this family that you're going to take them serious? You take Rupert Grint, who plays Redmond, and he gets in front of them and he kneels down, and he's an intense guy to begin with. And you see in his face, this is how M. Night Shyamalan shapes the situation. You see in his face the absolute dread. And he's livid because he knows what's coming, and what's coming is he's about to die. So M. Night Shyamalan chooses to show you the depths of which they go through by showing you his desperate face. He's going, you guys need to pick because I don't want to die right now. I really don't. And I'm not doing a great Rupert Grint impression right now. I'm not an actor. That's not what I'm here to do. But so M. Night says, instead of me showing you Dave Bautista landing an axe into this guy's chest and beating his head into a bloody pulp, I'm going to show you the face of somebody who's about to die and see the desperate look on it. And then he puts this white, like cloth thing over his face, and even between you could see kind of through it a little bit. You could see his face freaking out because he's about to die and he does not want to die. Then they pull the camera way back and you see Dave Bautista, who's a mountain of a man, come down on him with an axe and, what is likely, half dismember this guy. That's how M. Night Shyamalan shows you the depths, the lengths in which these people are willing to go. That's just his choice. Seeing the axe go into his chest, seeing his head come off. Now that's the kind of stuff that you and I get up in the morning for. We like that. It's not what M. Night likes. He likes the humanity side of it. So the humanity side of it, he doesn't show that. But what he does show, and he does it with all the other people who end up dying, is he shows the faces of desperate people who are trying to get out of this situation, who want this family who has every right to not believe them because there's no like solid proof right in front of their face that, hey man, you guys really need to fucking make this choice or heads are going to roll, quite literally.
Yeah.
So I think they do show the depths. You say they don't, I say they do.
And I disagree. It's based solely upon the fact that while yes, you do see the desperation and the fear on the face of the person who's about to die, it just raises the stakes when you actually see what they're going through and see what they're actually willing to do to save the world.
But you do see what they're willing to do. Well, they don't like not show that.
They don't show like it, there's a just to get to the point of the end of the movie with Leonard, who is played by Dave Bautista. He tells them like, after I die, you have a few minutes to sacrifice one of you, or the world's officially going to go into catastrophic whatever, and it's never going to come back, and you're going to be walking the earth alone because everyone's going to be dead. And he ends up pulling out a knife and he slits his own throat. And you don't see the throat slit, you just see the blood come down his shirt. Now again, I'm not sitting there saying you need to see the full-on graphic nature of it, but I just think it, like any other death in a horror movie like this, it raises the stakes when you understand how far these people are willing to go to. And again,
but did you not understand? That's, I guess I'm looking at your wording here. You didn't understand how far they were willing to go.
I understood how they're far to go, but again, we're watching all this through the perspective of the people who are being held hostage, and when you raise that, when you show what's being done, it just raises the stakes, because the harrowing moments, I understood the tension, didn't really get me though. The tension didn't really get raised.
But Damon, you and I are psychos. We went to Terrifier with a shit-eating grin on our face.
But it's not that. I promise you that. It's just like so even though I knew it was coming, let's just say Redmond is a good example, okay? I knew it was coming. I've read the book. I knew it was coming. Now, to be honest, the book is actually far more horrific, because they don't just kill him quickly. They beat him to death in the book. They beat him to death, and it's pretty savage. That would be going too far. I'm saying if you're on the M. Night Shyamalan level, like not taking it to that next step of literally beating this guy, because it lasts for like several minutes. It's not like a quick one chop with an axe and the guy's dead. This is full on, we're beating him to death. That would be a little bit more hardcore. In this scene, and again, I'm not saying we need to see full on gore, but just seeing, like, they wouldn't even show the aftermath of the body. Like, when he falls dead, they drag him out and they never show you what actually happened to him.
But what do you gain from that?
You gain the understanding of the gravity of the situation, because you're not, like I said, the tension never really raised.
But I knew he was dead.
Yeah, but it didn't really. Again, you just see a swing and you see him fall over. You don't really see what happened to him. You don't see the aftermath of it, and
I think that's, yeah. Go ahead.
But that, to me, always, just like any horror movie out there, Patrick, it always raises the stakes when you understand what actually happened to somebody. When you can see it, visually see it, it's such a striking moment. And that, to me, it's not just about shock factor. It does raise the tension. When you see what a person is willing to do, that makes it that much scarier to me. And that to me ruined a lot of the tension, because, yeah, he's dead. I got the point that he's dead. But if you show me how he died and I saw what they're willing to do, when you realize that all these people, all these strangers, Leonard and Sabrina and all the other, Redmond, you realize that not only are they strangers, but they seem like pretty normal people. They don't seem like psychopathic lunatics. You know what I mean? Leonard is a second grade school teacher. He may be a big, huge, hulking man.
He looks like a biker.
Yeah, but he's a second grade school teacher. And so when you realize that these people aren't killers by nature, they're not psychopaths, they're not here, looking for kicks on a Friday night like the Manson family. And when you see that they're willing to go that far, that to me just raises the intensity. It raises the tension. And that tension got killed, for lack of a better word, in that moment, because they refused to show it. And again, I don't fault M. Night Shyamalan for seeing through his own artistic vision. I'm just saying that if you're going to go for an R-rated movie, then show
that I can agree with.
And if you're not going to show it, if the whole point of not showing it is you want to maintain a PG-13 rating, fine.
Right.
I'll lose the same effect because you didn't show anything. You didn't show the aftermath, the guy being dead. You just literally showed him falling and then you showed him with a coat over him, and you never showed the after. You never show what actually happened to this guy. We never really know.
But you do see Bautista like swinging the axe on him, like you know what he's doing.
You do, but again, yeah, okay. But again, I know it's a different movie, but imagine, any great horror movie out there and you don't actually see it. And it's just,
I have a pitch for you. Because I think I know. Here's me telling. Here's Patrick's segment telling great directors what they should have done instead. It's just ludicrous. But I want to pitch it to Damon because I can see your frustration. If instead, I think to get the Damon Martins of the world who couldn't see just the gravity of it all based on what was out there. I think what I would have changed for an R rating that was still in the M. Night Shyamalan style, which is to not show the gore of it all, is to have them killed in a very ritualistic manner. This was just sort of like, we're going to bury an axe in your head. Okay? Like, they do it, and you kind of see it a little bit, and then they drag them away, because they also don't want the family to witness the horror of it, but they have to. It's part of the gig. It's part of the deal. So if there was a ritualistic thing they had to do, like for instance, they show Bautista bound Redmond's arms, like pull him up, and his arm, and then Bautista, again, like in some sort of clever blocking where maybe Redmond's body is kind of covering what's happening. You see that Bautista is like having to basically gut and eviscerate him like a hunter gutting a deer. Doing something so horrific, not necessarily showing it, but showing kind of motion and movement, but something that is not that is very like typical and recognizable as swinging an axe. It's like we have to imagine that he has to claw at the innards of this person. And then that to me is like, oh, okay, he's doing something really weird, really strange, really fucked up. Maybe it's so fucked up we shouldn't see it. Yeah. As opposed to something like, oh, he's planting an axe in this guy's head. Well, we've seen that a million times. So maybe do something more creative. How does that land with a Damon Martin?
No, I don't disagree. And again, because when you're like I said, like there are even creative ways to shoot what they did to make it a little bit more horrific. I'm not saying again you need to show the full on butchering of a person. I'm just saying that. Like you see the fear on his face in that moment, and like almost like there's like a mix of fear and rage in his face. Like he wants these people to pick, but he's also fearful because he knows he's about to die. You do a back shot. You don't show him swinging the axe and it goes to the back of his head. You don't actually see it go in his head. You just see his face go mute, and then you see blood and he falls over, and you can even have it blurred out a little bit. The choices of not showing anything just kind of muted the impact of that scene for me. It just kind of took away here's the thing. The end of the movie when Bautista, when Leonard slits his own throat, even that can stay the same if you
I like that one actually.
If you do the first one to where just that first one needs to be more intense. Mm-hmm. Show the intensity, the gravity. I keep going back, the gravity of what these people are willing to do. The rest of the movie you don't really need to do that again. You need to do it once. To prove what these people are willing, the lengths these people are willing to go to prove that this really is that real to them. They're willing to kill one of their own to prove to you how real this is to them. And I just feel like in that moment they just lost something. They drag him out, and you don't see anything. And again, it's not about the gore that I'm missing. It's just that they killed him, and I'm like, okay, well he's dead. Like, all right, I get it, kind of, But you just don't. I didn't feel the weight of his death in that moment because it just felt very quick and over.
Do you think at any point, it was sort of a thing where it's like, man, I know how bad this death is in the book, and this is just so far in the other direction that I'm dissatisfied?
No, not at all. I honestly, the deaths in this book, like I said, that one is more horrific based solely upon they beat him to death, but it's not, again, that doesn't bother me. I don't care they didn't beat him to death. That doesn't bother me. I just feel like not seeing the weight of that moment in that death. We see the aftermath, and again, the tension evaporated very quick. It was there and over in 2 seconds. It was not a long, torturous. It was torturous for a second when he was putting on the hood, putting on the mask, and like waiting to die. But it was, again, the whole thing took 2 minutes. It felt like in that moment, the gravity, the weight of that moment needed to be bigger. It failed for me. I don't want to keep getting lost on this, Patrick. We got to get into categories.
Let's get it.
Should we go ahead and talk about the differences between the book and the movie so I can explain to you what is different, and then we can get into our categories?
Perfect time to do that.
So there are really three major differences, and there's other little ones. I know anyone that's read A Cabin at the End of the World who's going to hear me talk about this is going to say, you missed all this. No, I'm just going to go three major plot points, okay? So in the book, the first one is in the book when I think it's Andrew goes for the gun in the truck, and he gets the gun and he ends up shooting Sabrina, who is the nurse. In the book, it's the other girl. It's Adrian. Is it Adrian? Is that her name, Adrian? Am I getting that right?
I think so.
I got to make sure I'm getting the names correct here,
yes, Adrienne, I guess.
Adrian, yeah. So she was the one. She was the one who got shot in the books. Again, minor plot detail, really doesn't play a major part until later. The second major plot point, and this is the big one, and this is the one that 100% convinced me this was M. Night Shyamalan saying my movie is better than that book. And again, to be fair, it's not that I was so loyal to this book that I like the book. It was a good book. Not one of my favorite books of all time. Not a book that I'm like, thumping on my chest and oh my God. So to be clear, I'm not saying it like that. Make changes. I just didn't understand this one. There's a scene in the movie where Andrew and Leonard struggle for the gun in the bathroom, right? In the book, the gun goes off and it kills Wynn. It kills their daughter.
That's a big one.
And the daughter, and the what makes it even scarier is when it's over, Eric and Andrew are terrified, they're horrified, they're grief-stricken, their daughter's just been killed. And then Leonard tells them that doesn't count.
Right.
She wasn't a willing sacrifice, so one of you still has to sacrifice yourself. So that's the biggest. That is the biggest. And that is the moment. There is an interview with M. Night Shyamalan. I want to read it here. It's from Collider. And they was talking about originally how he came to the book. And he said, that came to me and he said, I love this premise so deeply, and I think you guys are onto something. I really do. I don't believe in this story when it went left. And when it went left, I assume is when Wynn got killed. He said, I can't get behind that. And I think my audience, I wouldn't want to have them experience that. He never says explicitly what he's talking about, but that's 100% what he's talking about.
Right. There's no moment in the book that's bigger than that, right?
Wynn getting killed.
Yeah.
That's the big one. The third one, I guess there's four, but the third one kind of rolls into the fourth one. So after Wynn gets killed, they're grief-stricken. Sabrina is still alive at this point. Sabrina did not die. Leonard is still being emphatic, saying, you've got to make a choice. It's got to happen. Sabrina finally comes to her senses, snaps out of her cult-like trance, and says, I can't let this happen. She kills Leonard and basically lets them go. Eric and Andrew go, and she leads them back to the truck that they brought to the house, that the four strangers brought to the house. She leads them out, and the book ends with Eric and Andrew carrying their dead daughter, putting her in the back of the car, and they drive off. You don't know, did they just start the apocalypse? Because the other stuff, like the planes crashing, the tsunami, the earthquake, that all happens. That's all proof, so to speak, that the world is coming to an end. But they're still emphatic, we're not going to sacrifice one of us. But their daughter gets killed anyways. So Sabrina finally comes to her senses, says, I can't let this happen. She kills Leonard. And then she lets them go. And then we hear her kill herself in the woods. That's how it ends. And the family, Eric and Andrew, carried their daughter, put her in the car, put her in the truck, and they drive off. And the book ends with them driving off, and you're left to your own conclusion. Was this real? Was it not real? Now, real quick before we get to the categories, to be fair, I'm not even mad about that part of it not being there. Like, the film gives a definitive ending that there was an apocalyptic event happening. Obviously, we see that Eric ends up sacrificing himself. Eric dies. Andrew and Wynn leave together, and then they stop at a diner, and we come to understand that all these apocalyptic events have stopped. That's the M. Night Shyamalan. The aliens have stopped in signs. The trees have stopped killing us in the happening. He likes to give us a more happier, satisfying conclusion. That's an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and I'm fine with that. Again, I'm not critiquing that part of it. But the wind thing is what bothers me, because that's such a big one. And I know that's why he did. That's originally why he didn't want to make this. They wanted to make a very faithful adaptation of the book. And M. Night Shyamalan said that, and he never says this specifically, but I know that's what he's talking about. It's wind dying, 100%.
Yeah, that makes sense. I got to tell you, I like the book ending. What you're explaining to me, I like everything about that book better. This movie to me, first of all, I don't think M. Night Shyamalan makes that movie ever. He never makes a movie where the kid would die. I think he really loves kids. I even think he made this thinking like, I'm going to make a rated R movie that a kid could go see.
Yeah.
I really think that's how his mind works.
He is a father.
He's a father. He's a proud father. He loves talking about his kids all the time. I've sat in the room and filmed his interviews multiple times. Lovely guy, actually, really fun, like not over serious guy, which I think people imagine he's like really serious and intense. Quite the opposite. He's like a funny, jovial type person, but he loves kids. And I think part of him took on the responsibility of a Steven Spielberg, who says like, I make movies so kids can feel all the intensity and danger of a horror movie and still watch it, probably outside of Jaws, because Jaws is fucked up and kids shouldn't watch that. If you don't ever want them to get into a swimming pool, don't let them watch Jaws. Outside of that, I think he leans towards children. And I think all of M. Night Shyamalan's movies, outside of maybe The Happening, they lean towards children or the childlike hope in all of us. Because I think he, as a filmmaker, wants to make those type of hopeful movies. Now, you know me, Damon. I'm a fucking psychopath. The ending you're telling me, which would start at the vast left turn with wind dying, I'd have stood up like I was watching Spider-Man No Way Home and going, oh, fuck yeah. Yes. Because that's raising stakes on another level. But that's me, the raging psychopath. I like shit like that. And I love that ending. I have a theory on why they didn't do the Sabrina Leonard thing, is because you got Dave Bautista is the star of this movie. Let's not pretend like there's another bigger name. He is the biggest name in the movie. He's a fantastic guy. I think that they had to, I think they reconfigured the story to make sure he lasts until the very end. And I actually kind of liked his death, to be honest with you. It was my favorite sort of implied death of all of them. It was my favorite one. That shot of like sort of his lower waist while he's holding that big blade. And then it comes up and they don't show what he does, but you know what he does, right? I actually like that. But I think they don't kill him. It's total full speculation, right? Podcast speculation, fair warning on that. I think they just were like, we can't kill Dave Bautista like that. It's got to go a different way. So I think I'm just theorizing.
No, and you know what? Listen, again, all that's fine. Like, I don't mind that they the whole Batista killing himself versus Sabrina killing him in the book. That doesn't bother me at all. Like, that's totally fine. But the weight of Wynn's death.
I would have loved that. I would have loved to see a kid accidentally get shot.
That changes everything, and they ultimately switch it to where Eric sacrifices himself.
Yeah, I didn't like. That's where I started not liking the movie, Damon.
Yeah, because at that point, he has a concussion. He thinks he saw a person in the light. You never fully understand. Did he see something, or is he just reacting to a concussion? And then he ends up sacrificing himself. And I just refuse. And when you see this whole movie this entire time, even when they get to the point where they turn on the TV and planes are crashing out of the sky at an alarming rate, and that at that moment they're like, this is real. Like, this is actually something's happening. Even then, the relationship we've seen them build throughout this film, I don't buy that one guy would kill the other. I'm not saying they actually say you can't commit suicide. Like, it has to be They have to be a willing member has to kill another member of the family. I still can't buy Andrew killing Eric. I just don't. I don't buy that. No, I don't buy that happening. You know what I mean? No. And so that to me kind of ruined it. And again, it's the wind dying in the book raises the stakes so high. And again, Leonard in the book, he's a very similar, he's a younger guy. he's a basketball coach, and he's a big guy, like he's a big dude. So the Dave Bautista casting, with the exception of being I think late 20s, early 30s in the book, that's really the only difference. He's a big, he's the most physically. I think the way they describe it is the physically biggest guy that Wynn has ever seen. He's a big basketball guy, so he's a big 6 foot whatever kind of guy. All that's fine. But yeah, the gravity of that situation, when you take Wynn out of it, she dies accidentally, and yet they're still on their mission to go through with this. Even with that, let's just say the Wynn thing's taken out of it. I don't buy that Eric or Andrew would kill each other. I just don't buy it.
With you saying all of what you've just said, now it makes total sense why M. Night Shyamalan originally said no. Because he wouldn't make that movie.
Yeah.
That's just not the kind of movie he makes. He wouldn't make it. So it's just like saying, like, would Steven Spielberg make The Mist the way Frank Darabont made it? No fucking way he would.
Yeah.
He wouldn't let the main character shoot a kid in the face at the end and then have it all be all for nothing. That is not Steven Spielberg, and that is not M. Night Shyamalan. They won't do it. And they will. And M. Night Shyamalan is actually the opposite of a lot of directors. He doesn't leave you open-ended.
Yeah.
He ties it up. He ties everything up. And that's where I really disliked the movie at the end. I liked most of the movie. And then the end really bugged me because it was like they were literally just explaining.
It was too convenient.
Everything. They were like, oh, they were clearly the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and the apocalypse was happening, and I kind of saw something, and da-da-da. And I was like, this is not a strong M. Night Shyamalan ending. I was waiting for a massive twist. Now I understand that I don't expect and require M. Night Shyamalan to make a twist. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, it was happening so plainly and so on the nose. I go, that's not how M. Night Shyamalan ends a movie. Even his more obvious movies don't end like that. So what's going on here? And it was just, I was like, he just made the end of this movie just wrap up so nicely.
Yeah.
And it just felt wrong. It didn't feel right
it
at
happened
all.
so quickly too. It happened so quickly at the end.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's over. Here's two things I would change, and here's two things. One thing I'm going to say is kind of maybe a bit controversial. The other one I'm not. The one thing I'll say about this is with the ending. If you really want to give us an ending, like an actual ending where it's not as open-ended as the book, where these two guys just live with their dead daughter and you don't know really, was this real, was it not? Like, that's the part of the book you don't know. Like, was it really happening, was it not? It's not left up to interpretation. If you want to not have that happen, let's say Eric sacrifices himself, Andrew and Wynn leave, they stop at the diner, tragedy, they're trying to wrap their heads around everything that happened, and then the apocalypse continues, like a tornado sighted, like we realize it was all for nothing. Like, it's all happening. The end of the world may really be happening, but this was all for nothing. Like, everything we just sacrificed was for nothing. Yeah. That would have been a bleak, The Mist ending, like you said, right? Or if you're going to do it just like the book, which is a film you said M. Night Shyamalan wouldn't make, then my larger, more controversial take here, Patrick, is M. Night Shyamalan shouldn't have made this movie.
That's not a controversial take, because I think his instinct was that.
And that's ultimately my biggest issue with this film, is it's not just the changes from the book. Yes, there's the big one, the Wynn death, huge. But the tone of the film is off. And it doesn't, and the ending, when you talk, again, when I say it's fine, whatever you do, he wants to wrap it up, that's his kind of movie, okay, fine. But again, that's my problem, is that you've just wrapped too nicely of a bow on this story. Mm-hmm. And it's not that kind of a story. And just truth be told, Patrick, M. Night Shyamalan was not the guy to make this movie. Frank Darabont is the guy to make this
Frank Darabont should have made this movie 100%. Like a Frank Darabont, or like it's gonna bug me if I can't remember his name. The guy who did Dark and the Wicked.
God, no.
I'm pissed off because I
know. Yeah,
Brian Bertino.
Yeah.
Brian Bertino should have made this movie.
Yes.
Like 100%. It should have been a much more horrific movie, because it sounds like the book was pretty horrific, and it should have been made by a really thoughtful, talented director like a Brian Bertino or a Frank Darabont, who is willing to go to the line, step over it, spit on it, and then say fuck you at the end.
Yeah.
Like, there are directors who do that and they do it really well. M. Night Shyamalan's a great director, and I think you're 100% right. He should have stuck with his instinct, which was, this is not the book for me.
Right.
And, like, really, he made a good movie up until the end, which usually you go to an M. Night Shyamalan movie for what, Damon? For the end. You're like, almost always when you sit down to an M. Night Shyamalan movie, you're sitting there going, how does this all wrap up?
Yeah.
Always. Well, he wrapped it up like as basic as you could, as like on the nose, as holding your hand as you could.
Yeah.
And he's not that kind of guy. He's not even that kind of director who holds your hand through everything. He just shows you in the end. He's like a magician, is what he typically is, where he's going like, you're gonna have to follow where my hands are going, and in the end, I'm gonna show you something, and you're gonna go, oh wow, I didn't see that coming. That's what M. Night Shyamalan does, and he went against his own instinct. He just shouldn't have made this movie.
Well, and as I said, that's what my original criticism at the very beginning when I couldn't talk about spoilers. M. Night Shyamalan read a book. He liked the book, but said, I can do it better. And I'm here to tell you,
I don't know if I agree with that part.
No, because he that's what he said. The one he couldn't abide by the death of the daughter, and he wanted a more.
But see, I guess what I disagree with is, I don't think he went, I can make this better. He goes, how do I make this so that it fulfills like my sensibilities as a storyteller?
When they brought it to him and they said, we want you involved, we want to make a faithful adaptation. He said, I'm not your guy because I don't like the big left turn they took.
Right.
That's him. And then when he goes back and says, well, here's what I would do. And then they come back and say, we like that idea. That
was their fault. They should have said no. But they wouldn't. They didn't do it.
It could also be Hollywood saying, you don't have a big enough person attached to your movie, we're not going to make it. That can also happen.
There's that too, yeah. But like, for an example,
but them coming back to him and him saying, okay, so my idea works. Okay, we're going to make my idea. And that's where I say, it's I read the book, I like the book, but I could make it better. And that's where, again, it's not even about the changes as much as the changes and the choices that he made completely alter the tone of this book and ultimately completely change the tone of this material. It ends on a very down, kind of like very bleak note. The daughter dies, and you're left questioning, what was this all for?
Right. Yeah, no, I love all that. I love all that. I guess I would rephrase what you're saying. I don't think he took this book and said, I can do it better. I think he said, well, I guess if I'm going to do this, like, how do I make it more hopeful? I think that's how he thinks about it.
Yeah, hopeful's fine. When I say better, I'm just saying,
because I think Francis Ford Coppola took The Godfather, which people said was a dime store novel, like a garbage novel that you would have thrown away. I think Francis Ford Coppola looked at that and said, "Oh, I can do this better." That's when someone goes, "This is not that good. I can make it good." I don't think M. Night Shyamalan said this is not that good. He just went, "If you're gonna let me make it, then I have to make it hopeful."
Yeah, but
but it was the wrong choice. But I'm agreeing with you because I think it's the wrong choice. This movie should have gone with what the book did.
Yeah, and when I say better, I'm saying like in his version, this is the better version, is what I'm saying. Like, this is his version. He obviously he has to believe it's better because otherwise he would have made a faithful adaptation. That's the version he believes. But and again, it's the whole Shining, Stanley Kubrick, Stephen King argument. Stephen King hates The Shining, the movie, because it made so many changes that it's not the book he wrote, and he hates it, and he does not. It's well documented he hates that movie, even though it's a beloved movie, and the vast majority of the people love it. It's same thing here. It's not that when I say better, I'm just saying, like, if he thought this book was good the way it was, he would have made an adaptation, or he would have just said, "Don't make this movie with me. I'm not your guy." And
also, he could be a director,
and he would have stuck to those guns, because if they came back to him and said, and because when that quote I read you from the Collider interview, he obviously had ideas from the beginning of how he was changing, and they could have just said, "Kick rocks. Like, we're not making that movie. That's not the tone of this book." And he said, "Okay, I'm not your guy," and that's fine. That's totally okay. But when they came back to him and they said, well, we kind of like your ideas, he's like, see, you knew I was right. You knew I was right. That's the better movie. And that's what
Or
I think that is.
or they were just like, shit, no one else will make this movie. Let's
Yeah.
just go with M. Night, who will make it.
Yeah. So again, that's my issue is that like the ending is the ending and a couple of the choices made are my biggest problems. And again, I'm just saying it bluntly. He should not have made this movie. This should not have been made by M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, this should have been made by Brian Bortino for sure.
Yeah. Let's get into our full categories, Patrick. We've been having this debate for a while, so let's get into our actual categories now. We're going to talk about best performance, and we're going to kick things off. Now, I'm going to go ahead and spoil this ahead of time, Patrick, because usually we like to go in two different directions. We like to pick our best performance, and then you'll go one way and I'll go another. So we give kind of, praise to multiple people in this cast. Not going to do that tonight, Patrick, because your best performance is my best performance, and I just want to rave about it.
We all know who the best performance is. People know what, just they look at the trailer. God damn it, it's Dave Bautista. This motherfucker could do it all. I love this guy. Dave Bautista was a pro wrestler, folks. And by the way, an MMA fighter, like an actual MMA fighter who had some fights, who got in some real fist fights too. Tough guy, big guy, scary looking guy. A hell of an actor with an intense amount of empathy in his performances. You meet him in the beginning, and this is one of my favorite parts of the movie is the opening.
Oh, yeah, that's one of the best parts.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Little Wen, she's out there, she's catching grasshoppers. Sweet little Wen, putting grasshoppers in her little jar. She's taking little notes. She's a very nice little girl. And then she sees just the fucking Hulk, a massive, massive human coming at her, covered in tattoos and rippling muscle. And it's Dave Bautista, and they have this sweet little conversation. And he's so kind and so gentle to her because he knows just how horrible things are about to get.
Yeah.
And you see a guy who is genuinely trying to soften the blow. And then we get into the rest of the movie. A lot of what you see in the trailer, the idea of I'm trying to convince this nice little family who I otherwise would support and love and help out, convince them to do something so horrific and so insane and so unthinkable that it's going to drive them to the absolute brink of insanity. He tries his best to be a good and reasonable person, despite the fact that what he's propositioning is insane. And that comes across. And this guy was a pro wrestler. I'm not saying all pro wrestlers are big dodo heads, but I'm saying they don't even necessarily have a track record for that. Now, the only other wrestler I can think of that really does that really well is John Cena. If you've watched Peacemaker, he has a bit of heart in there too. He's learning the trade in that way. But Dave Bautista, in every role I see him in, he gets better and better and better. And this was really his movie in a real way. And it was fantastic. And I was bowled over by the contrast between the physical Leonard and the emotional Leonard. And that takes acting skill. And I guarantee you there's not a ton of 6'2", 240-pound muscle bound, hulks that can act that well. He can.
Yeah. Let me add some additional praise because Dave Bautista is the best performance in this movie. Dave Bautista said in numerous interviews, he wants to get he wants to get away from doing action roles. He wants to do more drama and rom-coms, and he wants to do things where it's not all about physicality because he's this big 6'3", whatever, hulking giant of a man with a lot of muscles. He wants to get away from that. He wants to actually do more serious acting roles. Well, I'm here to tell you, folks, hire this man for serious acting roles because here's where Dave Bautista killed it in this film. Absolutely killed it. When you first meet him, you meet this giant, hulking, huge man covered in tattoos, looks intimidating and scary. Every single thing he does in this movie, with the exception of one moment, and that's when he's wrestling with Andrew for the gun in the bathroom, he plays this role small.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere in a million years would you, if you heard this film and you didn't see it, would you think this was 6'3" hulking tattooed guy?
Yeah.
You would think it's a Sunday school teacher, for lack of a better. Like he acts so small, and I'm saying that as a compliment.
Yeah.
there's nothing about he plays it in such a way that he minimizes himself in this role. It's so beautiful and so well done, and he plays it so perfectly. I was blown away. I'm a big Dave Bautista fan in general. I mean, I loved him in Guardians of the Galaxy, Blade Runner. He's done a lot of stuff that I really like. Dune is great. Yeah, this is a film where I was like, they're finally letting him act.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're really letting him act. Like, because it's not the film has nothing to do with physicality, really.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, even the scene in the bathroom where he's wrestling over a gun, it's still not, hey, I'm 6'3", tattooed and muscled, and I can overpower you. It's more just the struggle where you see his size matched up against the other guy.
Right.
It's not even about, like, I'm this big hulking bodybuilder looking of a dude. They don't use the physicality in this film at all.
Yeah.
And I love that. And his performance is so quiet and so strong and so sad.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it reminded me of? The role this reminded me of so much, and a film that broke my heart and I'll never watch again. The Green Mile.
Yeah.
The late great Michael Clark Duncan. He is so sweet and gentle in that movie, and it's such a sad movie. I rarely cry at movies. I cried like a child at that movie. He's a gentle giant in that movie, and everyone's kind of scared of him because he's this big, hulking giant guy, but he's the sweetest, most tender, caring, gentlest person you'd ever meet. That's what Dave Bautista was in this film. Nothing about this role had anything to do with his physicality. It was just him being a sweet, gentle, kind of heartbroken man in this film.
Yeah, of course he's heartbroken. He's a youth leader, right? He's a coach on a team. He's a second grade teacher. He loves kids, and he's asking a family to do something horrific, and he wears that.
Yeah,
this guy's a really good actor. I mean, I think that's the biggest coup for this movie. It wasn't even that they got M. Night Shyamalan. It's that they got Dave Bautista, and he nailed it.
Yeah, killed it. Absolutely killed it.
Yeah.
Let's move on to most convincing psychopath in this movie. The most convincing cult member, if you will, however you want to say it with this group. I'm interested by your pick. I know what your pick is, and I'm really interested by this. So who did you find to be the most convincing psycho in Knock at the Cabin?
Well, you know, it's a very contained cast, very small, and the four psychopaths that we talk about, these four horsemen of the apocalypse, they're all very different. Now, I looked at it like, who in front of me could actually come close to convincing me that this was the real thing. Now, Leonard who we just talked about, Dave Bautista's character. Well, he's very soft and very sweet. And he's scary as fuck. It doesn't matter. He could try all he wants. He just looks terrifying, and I don't think it's a good idea to trust him just on a visual level. And then the contrast of all the sweetness, you would be like, I don't know what the fuck that guy's up to. Now Redman, played by Rupert Grint, he's already off the fucking charts, and he's angry and pissed off, and he's full of a lot of hatred. So you already are off of him. And then there was Adrienne, was it? Yeah, Adrienne, who, while being very sweet, seemed kind of manic. So I chose Sabrina, the nurse. She was trying desperately the whole time. Like, she's upset by the situation, but she's kind of wearing the panic of it all. She's like, I really don't want to fucking do this, okay? I don't want to do any of this. We just have to. I don't know how to tell you that any better. Like, I'm trying to make it easy for you to understand that, like I don't want to be in the situation at all. Something about her performance, played by Nikki Amuka Bird, had that desperation in it that I was like, if any one of these people was going to get me to kind of lean towards them, it would be her.
So I kind of get what you're saying when you explain it like that. I mean, I think the most convincing person, and not necessarily psychopath, but the most convincing person, the person who clearly believes what they're telling you, is, to me, you know, it's mostly Leonard throughout the entire movie. He seems the most committed. He's the leader. It's very easy to fall.
Yeah.
And Redmond is the most obvious because he's the guy who actually seems like a psychopath. Like he actually seems like a loony, and we find out why later in the movie that he actually is, which also confuses and blurs the line. Is this real? Is it false? Because you find out that he is the guy who had years earlier, had actually hurt Andrew in a bar. You find out he actually is a guy who got arrested for smashing a bottle over his head in what we assume is a hate crime because it's a gay couple. And you know that blurs the line again. Like, is this real? Were they targeted? Like all this kind of stuff. So very good. My answer, so your answer kind of surprised me because Sabrina is, you said very much, she's the one who's like seems the most caring, the most nurturing, the most I don't want to be here, but I have to be here kind of thing. And so she's a little off-putting in that way. You're going to laugh at my answer. Or you're going to be like, wow, that's an interesting answer because the most convincing person of like manic emotion that like I believe in this film is Andrew.
Huh.
Andrew dealing with PTSD this entire film. He's the one who's dealt with the most upfront examples of hatred towards his sexuality. We see a flashback scene, his parents, 45 minutes of awkwardness when they meet Eric for the first time, and it's just awful. And you feel that hurt of like, my parents don't accept me. Then he gets attacked in a bar in what we assume again is a hate crime. When they go to pick up their daughter in China, he has to play fake being his wife's brother. They play it off that the wife couldn't be there. So he is always on the outside. He's always feeling like that. When he finally snaps in this film and goes and gets the gun, he's the one I'm most convinced would kill somebody.
Yeah.
I don't really believe any of these other people want to kill anybody. They do a really well job of that, and that's also, again, in the book, again, you kind of get the sense that Leonard is a little bit more committed than the other people. Maybe, you know, like, kind of get that sense. In this film, they all seem committed because they have to be there, and they do that really well. But Andrew's the one that I'm like, this guy will kill somebody. He seems ready to pull that trigger. He seems ready to kill to protect his family. And so he was the most convincing to me because he was the one person in the entire cast who I believe would kill.
Oh yeah, no, I actually agree with your sentiment there. I think what I should have been more clearer about on the categories was I was talking about the four people.
And I know what you're going for. I just went in a different direction because none of them really sold me on it outside of Leonard. Because when he went to the TV and you could see it, you know, but
right.
That's an easy choice. I went with Andrew because like he's the guy who I believe like really was there. He was there and willing to kill for what he wanted. And none of the other people I really felt like that. Like they do a good enough job with those four characters, with Sabrina and Adrian, and after, because Redmond goes fairly early, where I'm kind of like, they don't want to be here. They do a really good job of like selling me that they're not killers.
Mm-hmm. And that, yeah, I guess of those four, Sabrina was the only one that could possibly convince me that the apocalypse was real.
Yeah, and honestly, like I thought Leonard did. So for that answer, pure Leonard answer, Leonard's my answer, but I was more convinced. I was more scared of Andrew than anyone else.
And Andrew had a reason. Andrew was. You go back into his memories and you can see from him why he'd be ready to make a sacrifice and not of anyone else's choosing but his own.
Yeah, the rage. You see the rage, and yeah, justifiably so. Let me also say that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, he's just lived a really shitty existence because of who he is and of no fault of his own. The world has been unfair to him, and he's like tired of it at this point, at this inflection point where people are like, oh yeah, also can you like kill one of your family members like voluntarily? He's like, all right, I've had enough.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done. The rubber band has snapped.
I understand his snap.
Yeah. Let's talk about best scare. This is, again, very small, very intimate movie. There's not a lot of traditional scares in this film, but what was your favorite scare in Knock at the Cabin?
Yeah, not a lot of scares, but I think what's interesting about this movie is that it's a very quiet tension. Like there's not a lot of there. Like it has to wait till very near the end to get to the shouting and the screaming and all that stuff. So it's very like. It's just kind of this seething tension, like steam rising. So whenever there was a loud something, those things got me. Like they actually like a proper jump scare. And there was a point where it's getting near the end, and lightning starts striking all over the planet like it's lighting everything on fire. And the one crack of the lightning, like, boy, it went right up the crack of my ass and fucking popped me right out of the chair.
Yeah, that was a good one. We were in a what was called an Ultra DX theater. It's like basically like an IMAX except not IMAX, and it was really loud, so it was very like
Yeah.
yeah. I was like, oh Jesus.
Yeah, I was in a Dolby theater, which is
Yeah,
also all about the sound. I was like,
yeah,
hey.
very loud. My favorite scare was more of like it was probably the one really traditional horror film moment in terms of like the pace of this movie is when Andrew goes for the gun and locks himself in the car and Sabrina's trying to break in. He's trying to load the gun
Yeah.
and he's trying to load a bullet into the magazine and load the magazine into the gun and she's smashing the window with her weird put together weapon. That was just to me the best tension in the movie. Like again, I know not to go back to our earlier conversation about the tension being raised in the moment when Redmond was died, where all the issues I had there, because I didn't really feel a lot of tension there. That moment was like typical harrowing horror movie moment. Will he get to the gun in time before she breaks through the window with her weapon? That to me was really good. And also they said that because when he first tries to get in there, she actually does slice his leg open with
Right.
her weapon. And so then that kind of like, again, it's, you're not talking pure on like overpowering man versus smaller woman where the physicality is unequal in that moment. She slices him down to size very literally by slicing his leg open, and so he's running to try to get to this gun in the back of the car. And he's trying to load it. The fingerprint thing won't work on the case, so he can't get it open at first.
Yeah.
Just
Good tension.
really good classic horror movie tension in that moment.
And another little shout out I'll give was they've locked Leonard into the bathroom, and then Leonard makes this loud bang like he's broken out of the window. Well, again, Leonard's the size of a barn door, and the window is not. It's actually small. It's like a decorative window, and they're like, "There's no way he got out of that window." And so Andrew points the gun at the shower curtain, which is fully closed. And when he shoots that gun, it kind of gets you in that moment. And then there's like an additional scare, which is then Dave Bautista fucking blows out of the fucking curtains and starts wrestling with him. Like it was kind of like a nice little double scare on there too.
Yeah. He shot him, just not dead. So
Yeah. It seems like it would take more than one regular bullet to stop a Bautista.
yeah. So, what is your introduction for this movie, Patrick? There's our next category. What is your introduction for this movie? And I assume you're talking about Dave Bautista showing up and being the very sweet, kind, gentle second grade teacher that he is and capturing grasshoppers with wind. First of all, also let me say I'm not a parent. You are. I don't. I know 100% you don't need my advice. I'm just telling you, you don't need my advice as a parent. And for the most part, Wynn's like, I don't talk to strangers, and Leonard's like, well, I'm Leonard. Now we're not strangers. The hell to the no. Okay. Tell your kids. Uncle Damon said, do not ever talk to strangers. I don't care if they introduce themselves or not. Do not talk to these people, no matter who they are.
No, absolutely. Our four horsemen of the apocalypse, they introduced themselves.
Yeah.
Because they're trying very desperately to humanize themselves before they ask for this heinous act to occur. So I thought to myself, well, Damon and I need introductions. And if I'm put in the shoes of these four horsemen, the first thing I'm going to do is go, hi, everybody. I'm Patrick. Charlie Manson face, tattoos all over the body. Listen, I'm an atheist, and I've been an atheist for as long as I can remember. I'm about to tell you some fucking weird shit that I would never believe in a million years. But you got to trust me that it's real, okay? I never believed, I never thought about any of this stuff, but now I got to tell you some shit that's going to turn your draws brown, okay? Hear me out, and then go, and then I would get into the spiel.
Yeah, that's good. I get that. Here's the two things. Here's one thing I would never utter in my introduction, because I am in a lot of ways the Dave Bautista. I'm 6'3". I'm 260 pounds. I'm covered in tattoos. I'm not as muscular, unfortunately, as Dave Bautista, but I am a big, kind of intimidating dude if you don't know me, right? 6'3", big guy, So I have to come at you from a different angle. I can't come at you as myself because I am very loud. I am very outspoken. I would scare the shit out of this family, without fail. So the two words I would not utter that you did. Now you're different because you are also covered in tattoos and everything, but you're not 6'3", immediately physically, you're not the guy. They're like, run the other way.
I'm about the size of Wen, so it's not really going to scare
I'm
anybody.
the guy they cross the street to get away from. 2 words I would never say, trust me, because that fails me right away. You're not going to trust a big tattoo guy. I would have to. I like your intro because I'd be very similar. I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist my entire time. I would, I would laugh and say, "Listen, I don't do acid, but this is going to sound like an acid trip." Okay. Have you ever done drugs? Okay. Okay, we're on an even playing field. You've done drugs at some point during your life. Okay. Remember that time you took the really wacky drug and you were cooking your shoe and thinking it was dinner? Okay. That's the shit I'm about to tell you about, folks. And then I would launch into my spiel about the apocalypse because anything else is going to sound psychotic. Like as calm and as like put together as Leonard is in his speech, I'm still like, dude, this is complete horse shit. Like, I got to set the base right away to say, I don't believe this shit. Yet here I am. Here I am. You know what I mean? Like, I got to set the standard from the very get-go that I don't believe anything that I'm saying. But yet somehow I'm telling you this. And the last 2 words I'm going to mention are trust me, because that immediately is going to throw me off because you ain't trusting me. I know better. You ain't trusting me.
I am Damon Martin, and I don't want to die, but I'm about to say some wild shit.
Yeah, I would just go up and I would say, listen, you guys know my wife. Whew, I would never say a bad word against her. She's a real fucking piece of work. Quoting another favorite of our movies.
Wolf of Snow Hollow, dude. The shit.
One of my all-time favorite quotes.
Shout-outs to Jim Cummings.
Yeah, you know my wife. She, the mother of my children, never say a bad word against her, but she's a real piece of fucking work. One of my all-time favorite horror movie lines. Let's talk about our 5 favorite M. Night Shyamalan movies, from 1 to 5. Now, we didn't rank them all because he's got a big filmography. He's like 14 films, so it's too much to rank them all. So we're going to give our top 5 M. Night Shyamalan movies, and spoiler, Patrick, we only have one difference in our top.
Oh, okay.
We flip-flop one. So let's just go. Our differences are number 2 and 3. I flip-flopped those. You know what?
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Okay.
They're the same otherwise. So let's just start off with number 5 and then go down the list. Number 5 M. Night Shyamalan movie is
The Village.
I like The Village.
The Village gets way too much hate. I was like, that movie's solid.
The Village gets a bad rap, and it's actually a really good movie. Joaquin Phoenix is good in that movie.
Everybody. Adrian Brody, right?
Adrian Brody is good in that movie.
Sigourney Weaver?
Sigourney Weaver's in that movie.
Me, dude. This movie gets better and better the more I say it out loud.
And then, what's her name? Why am I forgetting her name?
This is stupid. It's oh my god.
Judy Greer's in the movie too. I love Judy Greer. She's a great.
Judy Greer's in the movie, but then who's the love interest?
It's Ron Howard's daughter.
It is Bryce Dallas Howard.
Bryce Dallas Howard.
That's right. Yeah, she's
Bryce
great.
Dallas Howard. She's great.
It's a good movie. It's overhated because it does have the twist ending. Yeah. Which is we shouldn't get into this. We'll be here for 3 hours if we do it.
Yeah.
But the twist ending in that movie is that they are in modern times. That you think it's an old like 1690s Puritan thing, and it's not. People didn't like the twist. Boo hoo! It was a great movie.
Yeah. Number 4, we've got Split, which is a more recent movie. James McAvoy, Anya Taylor-Joy. First time I'd ever seen Anya Taylor-Joy was in that film.
That was my second time.
Great film. Great tension. Terrifying. The
scary movie.
The multiple personalities with James McAvoy. The fact this is another one where I'm like, how this guy didn't get nominated for awards just drives me insane. He was so good in that movie.
It's a real feat. And I remember the one thing I remember about this movie is that I saw this movie in Florida the year before in Florida. You know what movie I saw the year before? The Witch with Anya Taylor-Joy. And so a year later, I was in Florida at the same exact time of year, and I saw Split with Anya Taylor-Joy and James McAvoy. Killer movie, really, really tense, really kind of almost horrific. It's pretty much a horror movie. And then that fucking ending, that post-credit scene.
Oh my God.
I literally just jumped up and went, this is the shit, bro. And I fucking ran out, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah. So number 2 and 3 are flip-flop for us. I'm just going to name them and then we'll talk about them. For me, number 3 was The Sixth Sense.
Okay.
For you was Signs. For me, number 2 was Signs, and number 3 was The Sixth Sense. So the same movies, just I had Signs number 2, and Sixth Sense number 3, you had Signs number 3 and Sixth Sense number 2. So same movies. Again, interchangeable. Honestly, I'll be honest, I saw your list. I was like, well, fuck, we're going to have the same list. I flip-flopped it because I was like, you know what, I do kind of like Signs a little bit more. And here's why I put Signs number 2 over The Sixth Sense. I love The Sixth Sense. It's his biggest movie, his most well-known movie. I See Dead People, one of the most famous movie lines ever. Bruce Willis is brilliant in it. I love the film. Here's why Signs for me was number 2 versus number 3. It's more rewatchable. I've watched Signs dozens of times. I've seen The Sixth Sense a number of times, but if Signs is on TV, I stop and watch it. I love that movie. It's a very rewatchable movie. Not to say The Sixth Sense isn't. I'm just saying that like it's one of those movies where it's so easy to watch, and I just love it. So like that's why Signs to me is just a little bit ahead of Sixth Sense, and that's it. It's just because I want to, every time it's on, I have to watch it.
I love both movies. Actually, I think they're both really strong. I guess the only problem I have with Signs, literally the only problem, is the whole water is the cure.
That's
why the fuck would aliens come to a planet where they were allergic to literally everything on the planet? Outside of that, it's great. It's scary. It's dramatic. It's interesting. It's well acted. It's well done. It's a proper M. Night Shyamalan movie. Like everything about it, it's an incredibly well made movie. And then I put The Sixth Sense above it because it is truly an iconic movie. I think it is it's something that goes into movie history, and you just go, holy shit! Like we never saw anything like that ending up to that point. I mean, maybe a few times you've gotten some really great twists in American cinema. The twist in the end of The Sixth Sense is probably the greatest twist in American history, and everybody talks about it. And I remember going to see it in the theater, going like, "Wow, this movie's like pretty trippy. It's pretty weird." And then that ending goes, and when that ending hit, I was like, "Oh my god!"
So you saw it and didn't know about it ahead of time.
I didn't know jack shit about it before I saw it.
I didn't actually see it until it was out on video. I didn't see it in the theater, but I still avoided the spoiler. So I didn't know going into it what happened. So I'm so glad. I think that probably changes the experience of The Sixth Sense, because now it's so common. Like if you had never seen it, it would be hard for you to see that movie and not know the ending.
Yeah.
Because it's so out there, but
that fucks with the rewatchability because now
exactly.
Everything that's going on.
It's I'm splitting hairs. I'm really splitting.
Totally, hairs. Yeah. These are two great movies.
And one other reason why I have Signs number 2 for me is because the one moment to me is the scariest moment in an M. Night Shyamalan movie, which is the alien in Brazil. When they're showing the video of the birthday party, and you see the alien cross, and you see Joaquin Phoenix jump back in his chair.
Yeah,
great moment. So
good, man.
Single best scary moment in an M. Night Shyamalan movie, in my opinion.
It tapped into something much more human and visceral, which is like if we were all watching TV and there was live footage of like Bigfoot walking across the screen, everybody would collectively shit themselves because something that we've all been sure was not real is shown to be real in that moment, and it's scary in the moment. Like, what a great moment. Again, M. Night Shyamalan can make tons of great moments.
Number 1 for both of us, and to me, it's not even really that close. And it's not that I don't love other movies. I just said Signs is one of my. I love Signs.
Yeah,
I love that movie.
I love every movie that we've listed on this. I like them all very much.
Number 1 with a bullet for both of us is Unbreakable. His second big major film.
So good.
The single greatest superhero origin story ever told, in my opinion, in film form, not talking comic books, but like a comic book that was never a comic book. The character development, the twists and turns in this movie, the acting, Bruce Willis, Robin Wright, Samuel L. Jackson, off the charts. I mean, this film is just. I mean, this is like I don't know where I'd rank it all time, but like this is a top 10 worthy film ever for me. Like, I don't know if I'd actually put it into, I'm just saying, like, hypothetically, like, it's that good.
I see it somewhere in my top 25. I don't know where. Yeah. But that, by the way, you know how massive my list is of movies that I enjoy and love?
I'm saying it's of that level.
Yeah.
It deserves to be in that distinction.
It's very high up there. It's somewhere very high up on my list of just amazing movies. And I don't even know. I've never even told you this before, but Unbreakable makes me realize this. M. Night Shyamalan is the only director that I actually intend to watch his trailers. And it's because of Unbreakable's trailer.
Oh yeah.
It was the greatest trailer that ever was. The whole trailer is just Bruce Willis and this doctor sitting in a doctor's office,
surviving the train crash.
And he's talking about, blah, 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 this and this and that. You don't have a scratch on you. And I was like, what is that? What is this? And then the title comes up, Unbreakable. Then I go to watch it and I go, okay, it's about a guy who can't be broken. That's it's interesting. Okay, let's check that out. Then I learn that it's a superhero origin story at the end. And that's fucking amazing. And I go, oh my God. Like this is a superhero origin story without ever being tied to anything. It was great. It was an incredible movie. But because of that movie, M. Night Shyamalan's the one guy where I'm like, I do want to watch the trailer ahead of time. Because I know that what I'm getting in that trailer and what's going to be unleashed in the movie are two very different things. And he's just dangling the carrot. And I love that. I don't know. Like he's the one guy that I make the exception for that. And like all comic book movies, I actually do like seeing comic book movie trailers just because it's just part of the experience, even though it gives away most of the shit.
It's a popcorn movie. You're not.
It's different, but like also there's there's this great drama behind a good comic book movie.
And
trailer.
The anticipation gets built from a great trailer.
So those ones I forgive.
Yeah, when I saw the first trailer for Avengers: Infinity War, I was so excited, dude. I was like on the edge of my seat. Oh my God, I can still remember that trailer. I go back and watch that trailer every now and again because I loved the feeling that made me have when I watched that for the first time. Here's my other controversial statement I'll say tonight, Patrick, and this one's going to make you spin on your head.
Ooh, I like that.
The twist in Unbreakable is better than the twist in The Sixth Sense.
I think it is for guys like you and me. I think it makes sense for guys, for genreists like us. Even though Sixth Sense is a horror movie, I still think the twist in Unbreakable is way cooler.
Because when you get to it, it's so unexpected in that moment.
Yeah,
you come the entire time. The film's 30 years old. I'm not gonna save spoilers. When you finally get to the realization of who Mr. Glass is, who Samuel L. Jackson's character is, you don't see it coming. I mean, it is such a shock in that moment because the entire film builds him up to be, Alfred or Alfred, Batman's butler, or the faithful servant, the faithful guy who believes in the hero. He's the guy he wants to create a hero.
Yeah, he wants one so bad.
His entire purpose is he wants there to be a superhero. He wants so badly there to be. He's the Professor X. He's he's the guy behind the guy. That's who he is the entire film. And then when you realize at the end that he's the villain,
yeah,
holy shit! Did that knock me on my head the first time I saw this movie? I was like, no,
yeah,
no.
And it's such a smart storytelling device, which is typically your grand heroes in a really in these more typically heroic movies. The main villain is like a mirror, not a mirror image, but he's an antithesis of the hero. If the hero is unbreakable and kind of meek and kind of and a flawed individual, that is Bruce Willis's character in Unbreakable. And the flip side is a guy who's literally made of glass, who can break at the blow of wind, but is sharp and smart and creative and kind, and actually wants to build up this guy who is kind of beat himself down because of his life choices. You would never have assumed, but when you line up all the parts, every great superhero's arch nemesis is that to them. And it was so genius. And it makes you think, does M. Night Shyamalan love comics? Because he really nailed that one.
It's so brilliant. Also, real quick, I don't want to get too hard. We're already completely off tangent here. I do want to mention another thing. You mentioned the post-credits scene in Split.
Yeah.
Which is when they reveal it's Bruce Willis's character from Unbreakable is back, and he's looking into the character from Split. One of the coolest, unexpected, holy shit moments in history. And then They released Glass, which
Let's not talk about Glass.
I'm just gonna say we did our top 5 M. Night Shyamalan movies. I don't know what number his. I don't know. He's like 16 films. That's number 16.
Wait, better? Wait, over The Happening?
Over. Oh yeah, because it's.
You think it's worse than The Happening?
Because the tease for that movie was so amazing. I thought we were getting Unbreakable 2, and we got anything but.
Yeah, look, I didn't like Glass. I don't want to talk about Glass. I'm upset about Glass. But I do remember sitting in the theater watching Split, and when that after credits scene shows Bruce Willis, I was like, there's like 10 people in this theater. And I was like, no, out loud, no.
Oh,
What? And then he turns around, and I was like, holy shit! And I just stood up and stomped my way out of the theater. I was like, that's the coolest thing I fucking ever seen.
I remember what I said. You want to hear what I said?
Please.
In a theater. And I have no idea how many people were there. I really don't. I don't remember, to be honest. It wasn't a lot. Because I didn't see it first weekend, by the way. When I saw Split, it was later. I didn't see it right away. When it ended and that scene came on, I literally, the screen goes black because it's like the very end of the movie. I went, no fucking way.
It's great.
I was so excited. And then Glass happened. Let's get into our last couple categories here, Patrick. Let's talk about sequel, remake, or leave it alone. This is one of our new categories, Patrick. So this is a category where we take a movie and we look at it and we say, should they make a sequel to this movie? Should they remake this movie? Or should they just leave it alone? I'm going to go first. You already know my answer to this is remake.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the film that it should have been, in my opinion. It did not have the tone that it should have had. It did not have the demeanor that it should have had. The somber way this film ended, or the somber way the book ended, was nothing. This film ended in such a hopeful, even though somebody died, multiple people died, but like one half of the marriage died, the partners died. I was still like, yeah, but you ended on like they stopped the apocalypse, so it's all worth it? That's bullshit. No, that's not what this film should have been. And again, this is not, once again, I want to keep beating my chest on this thing. This is not just about me liking the book better. This is just about the choices they made did not sit well with me in this film. So remake, 100%. And it's not, again, let me be clear, it's not saying faithful to the source material. You can change things and still come to that conclusion of kind of like the bleak, the left up to interpretation kind of ending. I'm fine, but the choices they made were just too neat and too clean. I did enjoy that. So remake, 100% for me.
It's 100% remake for me as well. And it is like what we were saying earlier. Give it to Brian Bertino and let him, or Frank Darabont. I would genuinely like to see Brian Bertino do this, but also still with the same cast, still with Dave Bautista and everybody in place. Just make it that movie. No one would go see it. It'd be too hardcore. It'd be too nihilistic, but it'd fucking rule.
Yeah. So the next one, of course, is can we survive this horror film? We talked about it a little bit earlier, and we were kind of joking about like how much we would believe these people, and my belief would be 0. As we've said, no, not trying to offend anyone in our audience. Be clear, I don't care what you believe in. That's your choice. We are both atheists, so right away when they're like, the apocalypse has happened, I'm like, all right, dude, you're not convincing me. Like, go ahead and slit your throat, kill the other guy, just finish what you're doing, and we're going to get out of here. Because that wouldn't happen. Like, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't buy it. So yeah, I would personally, if I was on the other end of this, I was Eric, Andrew, and or Wynn, I would survive because I would never buy into the bullshit. I would never buy in to, I don't care how many TV screens you showed me of planes crashing and, lakes burning on fire and, earthquakes, none of it. I would not buy a single bit of it. So yeah, I would survive. And also the other more serious part of the would you sacrifice something? No, I would not. My family is me, my girlfriend, and our 2 dogs. I don't have children, but my dogs are my children. I love my dogs. Like, I know people are going to laugh, but I love my dogs like I love children. I would not sacrifice either them or my girlfriend or myself. So nope. I mean, let the world end is kind of my thesis here.
Yeah, I think the answer here is, can anyone else survive? Because it's me, my wife, and my 2 children. Yeah, it's not happening. Sorry, pal. I really don't care. Yeah, sorry, everybody. I'm going to survive, and the world will not. We will walk the earth in its darkness, just me and my family. And I probably prefer that anyway, because there's too many fucking yahoos around anyway.
The way they sell it, they're like, you'll walk in a post-apocalyptic world and just be you alone. I was like, it didn't actually sound that bad. Like, you're really
Yeah,
selling.
like have you seen the world?
Yeah, you're not selling me on something that's going to convince me otherwise here, folks. Like, I'd be by myself and I just have the world to myself.
This actually sounds not bad.
Well, enticing right now. Just me and my family, no one else. Like, I don't have to deal with other people or bills or anything.
That sounds kind of good. No zombies, huh? Okay, yeah. I guess we're fine.
Yeah, I'm not totally sold. This isn't a bad idea.
Yeah, let's all. Hey kids, let's all go to Costco for the meat rots.
Yeah, that's good. We're having a big cookout.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Final category of as always, Patrick. Is it scary? Knock at the Cabin. Is it scary?
Not in the traditional sense, no. But I do think between the score and I think the ability to sustain the tension and the dread, that this movie is scary on that level. Did it scare me? Of course it didn't scare me. It's not, and it's not really like designed as a scary movie. It's designed as a tension-filled movie. And does it deliver tension? Yes, all the way up until that, way too hopeful ending. Everything else from that point is tension-filled. You're on the edge of your seat. You want to know what is going to happen. You're not sure or safe in the idea of what is going to happen. So there's that element of the unknown. In that way, I would say, yes, this movie is scary.
I'll disagree and say no, it's not. And really, it comes down to my complaint earlier, and I'll bring it up again now. There is tension. You're right. Tension. There's tension, just not enough of it. It's not that the stakes are never raised to that level. I never got a foreboding sense of dread with this movie. I got tension, but not really dread. I never really felt a sense of dread, even with like when the whole apocalyptic stuff started actually happening. Never really felt that sense of dread. And again, the tension should have been ratcheted up more, and so that's why I say it's not scary, because unlike a film like, let's say, Speak No Evil, which I'm not even talking about the ending, not at all about the ending. I'm just talking about like the weird like tension throughout that movie. It's so off-putting and so unnerving that it's just like uncomfortable, right? Like,
it's also one of the best movies I've ever seen. It's kind of hard. Speak No Evil is very good.
When you texted me originally, you saw it right before I saw it. I saw it like the night after or later that same night, and you texted me and you said it's a really uncomfortable movie. And when I watched it, I was like, okay, now I get what you're saying. Before I even got to the ending, I got that. You know what I mean? This one was like, it's tension, but it's not enough tension. It's like talking about the rubber band pulled, like when you pull a rubber band out really tight and if you just like, when you touch it, it could snap, that kind of feeling. Wasn't that with this film. Never felt that. Never felt that level of tension. So in that way, for me personally, no, it wasn't scary because they didn't do it enough. They should, even with the happy-go-lucky, weird bow tie ending. That aside, just the tension, it wasn't enough for me. I wanted more. I wanted the stakes to be raised, and it just never got there for me personally.
Yeah, I felt like it was a super, super tight rubber band, and then the ending, it was like, surprise everyone, it's a really soft piece of spaghetti. Like that was the problem. And like because you knew when it wasn't going to make the big left turn and kill Wen. So when that happened, and they didn't make that left turn, like I can tell you that I'm sure the movie just went south for you from there. You were just like, fuck. Okay, they're not going to go that hardcore. Never mind. This movie's not the movie I thought it was going to be. I never had that. I didn't have that in the back of my brain. So for me, I was like, oh shit. So what's going to keep happening? What's going to keep happening? And then the ending happens, and I'm like, oh okay. Well, it has a soft landing.
Yeah, it's just again a very gentle, like very they put a bow tie on it. And again, it's not even about the whole. We need to have an open-ended movie where it's left up to interpretation. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying give me an ending, whatever that is. If it is the bow tie ending, or if it's like the apocalypse actually happens ending, which I would be more on board for. If you're gonna like the world's still falling apart kind of ending, you know what I mean? Like we didn't make the choice and the world's actually going to shit. That would probably sit well more if you're going to give me an ending where we know what happens. Or again, if you're going to give me the bow tie ending, but at least give me the stakes up till then. You know what I mean? Give me raise the stakes up to that moment. And again, it's not that I'm not advocating for them to kill a little kid in the movie, but that is such a key, impactful moment that completely changes the tone of everything happening. With everything that happens from that moment on, and you miss that in this movie.
Yeah, well,
Doesn't happen.
there it is.
All right, folks, we're going to get out of here. Obviously, want to say a big thank you, as always, to everyone that tunes in to Rewind of the Living Dead. Make sure you check us out on all of your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and, of course, over on my website, nerdcoremovement.com. And, of course, please go support our new YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rewind of the Living Dead. We are building our subscriber base over there, and the views are going up, so we appreciate everyone that's tuning in so far. Continue to please like and please subscribe to the page. We really appreciate it. It's a huge help for us. So go check it out. I know we took too long to get to YouTube, but we are there now. And you don't necessarily have to look at our faces if you don't want to. You can just listen to the audio. It's fine. I won't take any offense to that. So go check us out on YouTube as well. You got questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review. We just got a suggestion the other day, a movie that I think we're going to get to review here in the near future. Hit us up on social media, any social media, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead or Rewind of Living Dead, and you will find us on there. And you can also hit us up on our own personal channels. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
And you can also send us an email, rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That's rot. livingdead@gmail.com, and we will gladly get your emails and listen to your suggestions or things you have to say about the show, like, hey, we don't want the little kid to die. I get it. You understand. I understand. Listen, you can disagree with me. That's fine. Folks, we appreciate everyone that tunes in each and every week. We will see you next week for another edition of Rewind of the Living Dead. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you then.
Peace.